It's good to be here with you, Paul. Thank you to everybody tuning in to listen to us. My name is Andrew Stopelstead. I'm here with Paul Wandry, and this is the Why Dad podcast. So, taking you on a little bit of a journey on a different aspect of fatherhood
and manhood, really.
yeah, exactly. There's lots and lots of podcasts out there about, fatherhood and whatnot, and we wanted to take a little bit of a different approach, and so our our philosophy is to be a better dad, you have to be a better human. And so we're tackling those two aspects at the same time and going through what Paul likes to call habits. I refer to as virtues. Same thing, different name.
To be determined. We can argue that.
But we can't argue. I'll win.
TBD, to be debated. Yeah, probably will. Yeah, you had the upper hand in arguing, and you have more of a philosophical background, so you just start referencing random philosophers. Yeah. And I'll be like, oh, yeah, sure, okay.
But for all intents and purposes, we mean the same thing when we say our different words.
I'll allow it for now.
Today's topic, we're going to be talking about responsibility. In our last episode, we spoke about fatherhood as a responsibility and got into legacy. And after that episode, I was just really thinking about like how great of a conversation we had, and I wanted to delve deeper into responsibility as a habit, as a virtue, as something integral in our lives as fathers, my husbands in my situation, a single guy looking to find his wifey and have kids, but how important that is in our lives and should be in everybody's life, and how it's just a great habit or virtue to practice.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of got an understanding of from the last episode. Today we're just gonna break that habit down.
Yeah, because last episode we were talking about it specifically, from the perspective of a parent, of a father, like
Right.
What is your responsibility, very specific responsibility to your kids, and we also talked about it to your ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're just going to broaden that conversation
Yeah.
here. We're going to talk about it generally, like what other responsibilities do we have as parents, as prospective parents, as individuals, and then also how do we pass it on to our kids?
Exactly. So, and I think the best place to start is to just define what responsibility means. And there's a wrong answer, but there's many right answers to this definition, because we all have different upbringings and perspectives and nuances that we've seen this practice lived out. To me, responsibility is accountability and ownership.
Mm-hmm.
Owning my actions and the consequences that follow from said actions.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone says, "Oh, I've got responsibilities," and it's basically what they're saying is, I have things. I have. I'm just like not. Words aren't flowing today, Paul.
They've got tasks, obligations,
exactly.
a different word, right, for the same
there
thing.
You go.
And they're not like that. They are aware of the consequences that would occur if they don't take care of it, and they are not okay with those consequences.
So somebody said, "I've got responsibilities. I've got a family." What he's saying is, I have duties and obligations, tasks I have to own towards my spouse, towards my family, towards my children, and I'm holding myself accountable towards those tasks, because if I don't, negative consequences are going to follow.
Yeah. So you bring up an interesting point, like that jives with a thought earlier, which is I don't really like the term responsibility because I think it comes with negative connotations.
It can, yeah.
And maybe that's specific to my childhood is, okay, my responsibilities were doing chores I didn't want to do. But really what are responsibilities? They are realities in life. Responsibility as a virtue, as a habit, is a skill set that you can give yourself to navigate life in an effective manner. Because if you are not responsible, those things don't just disappear, right? Those tasks, those obligations, they don't just disappear. They're still there, and you have to deal with the consequences. But if you take the bull by the horns and you're responsible and you get ahead of it, you are setting yourself up for success, which is ultimately the thing that we're pursuing here is how do we set ourselves up as individuals and our children? How do we what skill sets do we give them that will set them up for success? And we mean that in the sense of fulfillment and happiness, like true happiness and etc.
Exactly. And a big motivation even behind all of that is you're saying you're setting your children up for success. Why are you doing that? Because you love them, and you only want what's best and what's good for them, and you're taking ownership of your children's success and giving them what they need to be successful, and not in like an entitled way, but bettering yourself, owning up to that task, and seeing that task through. Because again, you love them. You only want what's good for your children.
Yeah. So it kind of makes me think of like just basic human motivation, right? What motivates us? Pain and pleasure. We're either pursuing the increase of pleasure at whatever that is, and it could take many shapes. It could be just a basic carnal pleasure, or it could be something more profound, like the peace that you find within your soul. And then pain, which could be physical pain, emotional pain, anything like that. So we're either trying to avoid pain or gain pleasure, and responsibility allows us to distinguish between, okay, do we want to avoid the pain of the negative consequence that would occur from ignoring this responsibility, and B, obtain the pleasure that comes from the satisfaction, the fulfillment, and the positive consequences. And teaching ourselves and our kids to weigh those consequences, and the challenge for ourselves and for our kids is to like, okay, how do we teach that because oftentimes it's the positive outcome of fulfilling a responsibility is a delayed gratification. Right. So how do we teach ourselves and our kids that sometimes you need to set aside immediate, instant gratification, which is just becoming, it's always been prevalent. It's part of our human nature, right? But even more so in today's day and age, how do you put that aside for the long-term benefit?
Good questions. And then talking through this definition, we've been using a lot of the examples of our I hate using like the word responsibilities when you're trying to define responsible, but like how do you apply this habit towards yourself? You are responsible for your own happiness. You are responsible for the negative that comes from all the actions, like you said, that pain. And so just taking everything you said and you apply it to you have to apply it to yourself as well. So we were talking earlier, you have to take ownership and buy into the good of your body. Like you were saying earlier today, brushing your teeth. To some it's a chore, but we owe it to ourselves to take care of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so, okay, a simple task as brushing my teeth. Something mindless. It's a small response. It's something that we have to own up to ensure good oral health. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I'm in charge of my body, what I put into it, what what comes out of it,
Yeah.
physically, and um, how I direct words or thoughts towards other people. Um, am I owning up to all of that and what may follow
Mm-hmm.
from that? So really, responsibility starts with yourself, branches out towards others, and then to your immediate family, and then on a grander scale, because we are part of this earth and society, we have tasks that we owe towards society. Again, we're getting into a little bit of a side of philosophy that's more duty ethics, and I don't necessarily agree with that.
So
But
you don't want to dive into the whole social contract thing right now?
But if we want what is good, then we will do good,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll we'll take that good as our own and just do everything we can to make that good happen. So in a nutshell, that's how I see responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree with that perspective. Another term I would throw in there for responsibility is reliability.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
it's similar to accountability, but more in respect to others,
Yeah.
right? And you spoke of your responsibility to your family and to those around you, your friends, um, yeah, to work, to anywhere that you have a relationship with others. There's going to be an element of responsibility, and also to our fellow man
Mm-hmm.
and woman, we have a level of responsibility, and the more responsible we are, the more we uh, live up to our word,
Mm-hmm.
the more we accomplish tasks, even if we haven't committed to them per se, but are expected of us based off of our role, the more reliable we'll become. And why is reliability important? It's important because it builds trust.
Mm-hmm.
It builds trust with those around you. And I think that's a huge, a crucial element if we're living in with anybody else.
Right.
But yeah, especially to pass on to our children, is because you cannot operate effectively as a family unit if you don't have trust.
Oh, absolutely.
So reliability, I think, is a big aspect of responsibility.
A lot of other habits hinge off of being responsible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and frankly, responsibility could be kind of a daunting concept. We could spend the next hour listing all of one's responsibilities,
Right.
and still not exhaust the list.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be pretty overwhelming.
It could, and you could do that, and I think, to me at least, you'd still be on square one of trying to figure out what exactly responsibility really is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it is a good way to get to it by breaking it down into what relies on you. in your actions.
Mm-hmm.
But then you got to take to the next level and say, okay, so what really does that mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So are we ready to dig into how we do that? How do we take on responsibility in an effective manner? And I'll also throw in there B, like, how do we avoid getting overwhelmed, which is part of the effective part. But
Yeah.
is there anything else we want to?
I mean, like I said, it's there's a lot of personal aspects to defining it, and like I said, to me, it's I want the good, so I do the good, and yeah, let's just throw it out like that.
Mm-hmm.
I want the good, so I do the good, and I own every step as mine along the way to achieve that good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you were saying earlier about reliability, trust, etc. I broke that off and went on a tangent. But one thing that really bothers me is when people I'm with fail to recognize that their actions have put them in the places that they are or have led to certain things
Mm-hmm.
happening. When it's someone's talking, oh, I did this and this, but this happened, and that I can't believe this has happened to me. Did you take a minute to reflect upon the actions you performed?
Yeah. Yeah. They're playing the victim.
Yeah,
And I am right there with you.
it's hard to empathize when
So yes, I agree that it can be hard to empathize. It is I think there's a balance.
Yeah.
And there may be those who are not at the point where they can recognize where they're falling short in that aspect.
Oh,
And
100% agree.
and the reason why they're venting in that manner is because that's how they feel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we can't negate, or we can't, but I'm of the perspective that we shouldn't, in most cases, outright negate those feelings in the moment, because when somebody's in an emotional state,
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to listen to logic.
Right.
And also, they're also not at the point, and this is a whole other can of worms,
Yeah.
but they probably are not at a point where they can successfully process and regulate their emotions.
I 100% agree with that. And that is another road that I didn't formally intend to drive us down. But you're absolutely right. A couple things there. You can, again, you shouldn't negate someone's feelings because emotions are real, and what people feel is what people feel.
Mhm.
And so to downplay that is
Counterproductive.
yeah.
And so basically, if you encounter that situation, it is hard to empathize in that
Mhm.
situation where you can clearly see is, dude, it's right in front of you. If you had just called in to work to say you were sick,
Mhm.
you wouldn't have gotten fired. So it's very clear. But and maybe that's not the right example, but basically,
Paints the picture.
yeah. At that point, there's a multi-step process,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to kind of rewind to the okay, and you make this is more important for people that you are responsible for,
Right.
like your children, your family, and if you choose not to uh, exert the resources on this individual, like if it's a coworker, you're probably just going to roll your eyes and shrug, unless you're
Mm-hmm.
close with them. But if it's somebody you're invested in, then you'll probably want to help them at the earlier step of processing those emotions,
Yeah.
and then when they get past that or are better able to cope with their emotions, then you can address the more logical element of things and be like, yo, what could you have done differently next time?
Right. And I think actually this unintended road is going to pop up again in one of our next points, teaching responsibility, especially to children, because emotions are one things children experience every other second of their life.
Mm-hmm.
So hold on to that because we're going to come back to it.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. It's like I said, it's a can of worms, emotions. And I'll shut up because that'll be a whole other tangent.
But really, what I wanted to get into first, and makes sense to me to follow this order, is how do I personally live responsibility?
Mm-hmm.
What, again, coming back to ISA, this is an important asset in our toolbox of habits, and so many other virtues or habits naturally flow through this, or they feed each other. A very symbiotic the right word?
Yeah, I think so.
Relationship with these virtues. I don't know. You're the word guy, so I'm just gonna
blank.
say words. You can tell me if I use them right away.
It sounds great. It sounds good, if nothing else.
But like I said, I want good, so I do good, and I accept the actions and consequences that doing that good entails.
Right. And to your earlier points, you do not subscribe to the playing the victim side of things.
Yeah, I'm not saying I don't feel that way sometimes. Right. We're human, and it's easy to like try to point the fingers towards something else other than your own self, because why would you want to blame yourself?
Oh yeah,
it's
because to the human side of things, blaming yourself means you have to exert energy and resources to manage the situation, which at your most base level, you're trying to conserve energy. I don't know if there's anything there actually psychologically and at a base level, but
and then not only that, it's you have to accept the fact that you were wrong,
which hurts our egos.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. But the flip side, like what you're proposing is incredibly empowering.
Yes, it is.
Because the minute you start taking ownership and you stop saying, oh, this happened to me, even if it wasn't your fault, you go from the passenger seat to the driver's seat.
Right.
And you're like, oh, I can actually drive this where I want it to go.
I have control.
Bingo. And control equals freedom.
Exactly.
And freedom is a big element of fulfillment and happiness.
Yeah. Once you understand you have control, or some control over the consequences of your actions, you can accomplish so much. So to me, it's so important to always know. And I'm a very logical and rational human being. Yes, my emotions do get in the way, but I try to see through, like a chess player, 4 or 5 moves ahead. What is this one action I'm doing going to play out in later on down the road? Are there going to be immediate consequences? Yeah, there are, and that's part of the game, the game of life. But it's really understanding that everything I'm doing right now has an impact on myself, for good or for bad, at this moment, and some foreseeable, even unforeseeable consequences later on down the road. It's quick example. It's kind of like the stock market. You can put a couple bucks into a stock, make a quick buck, and then 7 months down the road, that cryptocurrency or whatever you invested in took off. And you could be kicking yourself like, oh, why didn't I just hold out? Well, if you had things going on, like the quick buck you made, you needed to take care of things, and like a family situation or something that arises. And so it's you own the greater good for over like the smaller little pieces of good that are scattered about. So it's understanding what is what is my good, what do I really want, what is my desire, how am I, what are the actions I'm taking towards that. And like I said, there's gonna be those small little consequences, but at the end, say in that situation, you had to buy a house, so you had to cash out.
Right.
So you now have a home for your family, and you're raising them, and they're comfortable. Or even if times are dire, you still were able to say, I fulfilled like my goal of providing for my family what they needed at this time. They had what they needed, and now we're doing okay. Could be doing great, or you could be in that paycheck to paycheck scenario.
Yeah.
But you have a roof over your family's head.
Yeah.
You were able to provide that, and there should be. You shouldn't. It's so easy to be hard on ourselves in those situations. But you have to see that as a success,
right? And it kind of
own that.
Yeah, and that kind of highlights like the hierarchy of responsibilities. But yeah, the minute you start, or when you own your actions and the consequences thereof, and in your example,
it's a weird one, but it works.
Yeah, we got that right. No, it's good. Your family continues to have a roof over their heads and food on the tables, and that is like one of your higher responsibilities as a parent,
right?
As a family, a member of a family, and that is good. That is good, and recognizing that, owning that, allows you to move forward based off of facts,
right?
Because if you ignore and you don't own up to those things, and you proceed, then you may be proceeding on false pretenses, and you'll ultimately fail.
So yeah, exactly. Even as a husband and father in your situation, in me as a single guy, like we have to do the good for us. Now, in your situation, the good for you plays out into the good for your relationship with Sarah, and then that plays out the good of your relationship into the good of your children, and you having to own that, and you having to be all in on your relationship with your wife, and then all in, the both of you, on your relationship for your kids, and owning every single piece that or action that you take on, and understanding analyzing the good or the bad that's going to come from those, and obviously striving towards the good. But then it starts with us as individuals, it branches out. So if we're not looking for the good of ourselves and working and working towards that, and when I say good, real good,
right? And it's not like the blinders on good,
right?
Because the good of self usually involves, to an extent, the good of those around you. If I focus on myself purely, then I'd probably be working like 60 to 80 hour weeks, and then in my off time going fishing or camping or whatever, and just leaving Sarah and Evie to the wayside.
Right.
But that is not what is not what aligns with my purpose, but also doesn't align with my responsibilities, and owning up to your responsibilities it is what will provide you or lead you to ultimate happiness.
Right. So, and that's something. This is something I think about a lot as a single guy, and trying to find Mrs. Right. Going on dates and kind of starting a relationship. Like, one, it's scary, and you're weighing the risks and the rewards with each and with. A lot of us think this way. I kind of do sometimes, but the risks and the rewards of a future with that person, and like my responsibility. Again, I'm using the word in the definition, but we already described that. But my responsibility is to put 100% into discerning, is this for me or not? Being people say intentional dating. I'm like, to me, that's the only way to go around it, because you, like we were talking about, you also have to strive to seek the good of the other person that you're being involved with.
Yeah, you owe it to both yourselves, exactly, whether you end up with that person or not. Because if you end up together and you're not a good fit, you're doing both of yourselves a disservice.
And all because there could be multiple reasons, but it's just like, okay, I'm lonely, so the first person I meet up, it's you really have to take into thought and into yourself and figure out, is this for the good of me and for the woman I'm seeing? And if it's just for the good of you, then yeah, like you said, you're doing not only yourself a disservice, but you're grave disrespect and disservice towards the other individual in the relationship.
Yeah. And then on the flip side, when you do ultimate, like you are doing yourself a service by not settling, basically, because when you do find your future partner, will you fit each other's lives like a glove? Absolutely not.
Right.
But that's also part of the process. But everywhere that matters, you will complement each other, and you will help each other become better versions of yourselves, and B, your lives, like, you'll create a synergy between the two of you.
Yeah.
And that's why it's crucial that you do find the right spouse, because it could very easily lead to whatever the opposite of synergy is. A black hole. Black hole of death. But if you find that individual and you are aligned in investing in each other and supporting each other and loving each other, then your lives are going to become so much more abundant.
Right. Absolutely. That person takes on your happiness and owns your happiness to it, and you're taking on their happiness and owning their happiness, and you want nothing but good and happiness for them.
Yeah. And you also owe it to your children. Speaking of responsibility, and going back to last episode, because now, granted, there's an element of, like, love is a verb, love is a commitment, not just a feeling, right? So, but that's also part of it. You have to find the individual who is willing, who has that same approach, that same perspective, that same commitment, because then you'll be able to work through the tough times.
Yeah.
But if you don't end up in a relationship like that, then that will be hard on your kids.
Yeah.
One, it's not going to give them a good example, and two, they'll feel the effects of whatever clashing there
Oh, yeah.
is.
And they pick up on that stuff really easily.
Yeah, they absolutely do.
Because they're looking to us.
And here's the thing. We all as individuals, this is another tangent, are naturally egotistical, right?
Mhm.
Because ever since we were born, like all we knew was what was going
Self-preservation.
right. And Sarah shared something with me recently. We haven't been able to fact check it, but it was something to the extent of 6 months out of the womb that it takes for the baby to realize that the baby and the mother are different individuals. And then, but as you get older, you gradually define more sense of self. You separate yourself from those around you. The younger you are, the more you see everything and perceive everything that is happening in the world as relating to you specifically. So if you see a bad thing happening, like your parents are angry with each other and they're yelling, and you're like, we noticed this when Abby was 2 or like a younger 3. I don't know if it's still happening, but like Sarah and I could be arguing and she'll get upset. Yeah. Abby will, because she feels it and she feels she's the cause. You know?
Oh, even my nieces and nephews, when there's confrontation in the house, they feel it had nothing to do with the kids. They just walk into the room and they're like, "Oh no, something bad happened," and they'll go up and give people hugs, like, "I love you, I love you."
Yeah,
like I'm here, but I love you.
Yeah, I think it's a very natural thing, even as a human. Like you see something wrong, you're like, "Oh shit! Like what did I do?"
Right.
Unless you're a complete narcissist, but
yeah,
but that's a whole other can of worms.
But that'd be if that's true. That's like the babies being like the separation part.
Yeah,
would be interesting.
Yeah, and I take that with a grain of salt, but I do think there is at least an element of truth to that. They feel so, because the first 9 months of their existence, they were like DNA aside and soul, right? And all that. But for all intents and purposes, one entity. Yeah. Right? Because they relied solely and entirely on the mother carrying them. And yeah.
Kids. Something like, yeah, the way they think about these types of things, it always makes me wonder, one, how do babies think? Two, like how does it develop into the rational beings that they are into toddlers when they're starting to think like that and make these connections and then draw like that conclusion, oh no, mom and dad are fighting, it's my fault. You know?
Yeah.
When we know it's not, but it's that's a very interesting road to explore.
How many side roads can we go down? But
as long as we get to the summit, does it matter?
Right? Agreed. We're taking the scenic route. But yeah, to your point, we owe ourselves and our future spouses and our future children a responsibility to choose wisely. And yeah, that's just another element of responsibility and anticipating those consequences. So that is kind of like a responsibility of reflection, consideration. Because if you just make decisions willy-nilly, and that part of that is just part of life and how you learn, right? But if you don't reflect on what happened and what you could have done differently,
the impact,
then you'll never change.
Right.
But the more you reflect on that, and resolve to do better.
And this kind of, do you want to stop here for dad jokes or?
Oh snap! Dad jokes. I didn't prepare any.
But that's what the Google's for. Because like all this leads into my next and final point is teaching responsibility. And we're talking about being responsible ourselves. And you brought up this perfect segue of we owe it to our children because they're watching our every move. So
Yeah.
it just naturally led into the next point, and so before we get into that, I thought we should probably do some dad jokes.
Yeah, let's do it. What you got?
Oh, you start. Because I don't have my Google open yet.
Oh, this is bad. This is really bad.
Oh, bud, lay it on me.
So I guess it qualifies as a good dad joke. What did one calendar say to the other on New Year's Eve?
What?
See you next year.
I used to have a job at a calendar factory, actually.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I got fired because I took a couple days off.
Nice. What is a New Year's resolution?
What?
Something that goes in 1 year and out the other.
I love telling dad jokes. Sometimes he even laughs.
Nice. Oh, I just heard one recently. Oh. Let me know if you get chilly.
Okay.
I could take you to the corner because it's always 90 degrees over there.
When a toddler reaches the Y stage, it's like opening a bottle of champagne. Once it's uncorked, there's no going back.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
I don't know why that's on a dad joke list. Oh, corny dad jokes.
Are there any other kinds? Oh man, these
What
are
do you
bad.
call two monkeys that share an Amazon Prime account?
What?
Prime mates.
Oh, nice. Oh man, I'm really striking out today.
Why'd the orange lose the race?
Why?
It ran out of juice.
No. Yeah, I think I'm tapping out.
Yeah. My list is...
Let's see if I can get one more. What did one plate say to the other?
What?
Lunch is on me. How does a penguin build its house?
How?
Igloos it together. Alright. Good enough.
Right. So, back to the real part of the podcast. Teaching responsibility to children. And we kind of just started this. And you were getting into it, like children seeing responsibility in action. Your Evie example, how impressionable especially toddlers are. And when they see someone doing good to achieve good, they're going to be more inclined to follow that pattern.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be building that habit naturally by seeing us live that habit.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, with young children, that's the first major ways. Being a responsible adult in all of your actions, big and small. Maybe you see the memes, Mom, can we get McDonald's? We have McDonald's at home. The McDonald's at home. But it's, oh, can we do this or that? It's no. We have food at home. We have to eat the food at home. Otherwise it goes bad and you waste money.
Mm-hmm.
And in that regard, you're spending money. You can start to teach them a little about that. Yeah, I have the money for that, but we already bought dinner for tonight.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the refrigerator. We just have to cook it up. And
Yep.
so you're teaching, and it's a lot better food for you than
Right.
McDonald's, but you're teaching them the responsibility of economics and health.
Yeah. Or meal planning
Mm-hmm.
and getting groceries and making your meals and sticking to it. There was a time where Sarah and I were like, also, I should see if I can get this stat, but there is a surprising amount of groceries that are thrown away in the U.S.
Yeah.
But, and there was a time where Sarah and I were not on top of like meal planning.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we would get groceries, and then sometimes those groceries would just go to waste because we didn't have a plan in place, and it was a long day. Evening comes, we're too tired to cook.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a commitment to ourselves to make it happen. And what do? We take the easy route, the quick fix, the insta pleasure, and we order in. And eventually we got sick of that.
Right.
And can't remember if that was before I became or after I became, and maybe that was a result. But hopefully, frankly, it was the beginning of last year.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, this is getting ordering in is getting old, and it just feels bad, and we don't feel good when we eat this stuff, and so we had to make a change, and so we decided to build a habit to start meal planning.
Yeah.
Like, and I was like, okay, what is feasible for us? So we started with 2 meals and a salad for lunch.
Yep.
And that gets us through like 4 to 5 days of the week for both meals. And then, okay, on the weekends, we have more energy to manage everything else, or we do leftovers, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And, but now we have established that habit, and that habit, Evie can see that. We sit down, we order groceries, we plan it, and we have good, healthy meals as a result.
Right.
But, and to your point, we had to set the example. And if we weren't doing that, we would be irresponsible to ourselves and also to Evie.
Yep.
There was a phrase, I think I heard it first on the Dad's Edge podcast, which is another good dad pod. And I don't know if he coined it or if he got it from somewhere else. But he said, habits are caught, not taught.
Yeah.
So, like, they see your example, and they'll learn more through that way than just like you telling them. Right. I think there's, with everything, there needs to be a hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
There needs to be some conversation and whatnot. But yeah, setting that example is huge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Example, and then just in helping my nieces and nephews get through the stage of life that they're in. Example, and kind of having these like rational conversations with them on their level.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we discussed a little bit. It's hard for kids to really understand the concept or the ability to own up to their actions because they do something wrong and they know they're going to get punished, so they're afraid of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so just having those conversations it's like, these are the actions that you took, and you need to know you can tell right from wrong and what you need to do to achieve good.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, you bring up a great point that like having these conversations and at their level is hard,
mm-hmm.
and you definitely can. I think the biggest thing is to just get the gears in their brains turning.
Oh, yes. I have an example. One of my nephews, I was out on a trip, and around the house, there's no riding bikes by the cars because shit happens. So, in order to just minimize the risk for them to do something, you set boundaries and guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
And make it known that there's consequences that are going to happen if boundaries and guidelines are not followed or broken. So they know, like, they can do that, but they're gonna get in trouble. So yeah, I was out, and the rule is not to ride bikes around the car. And I have a beater car. I don't really care too much, take too good care of it, but when it runs, it's a good car. Gets me from point A to point B. And so my youngest nephew was riding his bike around the car, lost his balance, and put a scratch in it. Honestly, he tried to show me where the scratch was, but there's so many scratches around it. So that's besides the point. I couldn't have cared less that he did that. But there's still the principle that needs to be upheld. You did something that you weren't supposed to be doing, and so you have to take ownership. So I guess the whole week I was out of town, he was so nervous about having to tell me what happened. And I got home from my trip, and my mom gave me a brief rundown of what happened, and that my nephew was waiting for me to come home so he could own up to scratching my car. So I was sitting outside, and he just came up all sheepishly, and I could tell that, like, he was afraid. I don't know if that's the right emotion he was feeling, but he was nervous because he knew he did something wrong, caused damage to something I have, and knows that I take really pride in all of my things, even if it's junky like the car. I'd still take as good care of it as I could. I'm not gonna just, it's a junker, so I still treat it right. I'm not gonna neglect it. So he knows that I take pride in all of my things and my spaces, and am responsible for all of them. And so he came up, and he just said, "Uncle Andrew, I was riding my bike and I scratched the Mazda, and I'm really, really sorry." And so I knew it was coming, so I could have the conversation that I had to get the wheels turning in his brain. So it's just, you have to flip the why game back on them and get them to think and rationalize through, like they make us do by asking why. So it was just like, oh, like, well, what's the rules about riding bikes around the cars? It's like, we're not supposed to, and I know that, but I did anyways because we were having fun. And then that happened. I was like, oh. So what? Just asking him why he thought he needed to be in that area to have fun and things like that. So it's just making them, like you said, get the wheels turning to really reflect on their actions that they did. And then not leaving it there. And it's just, okay, so what are you going to do next time? Like, how are you going to avoid falling in this area again? And it's very simple. It's something that he can answer. Is follow the rules that we have in place. No riding bikes around the cars. Riding in the area where you told us where we could ride bikes. We have the long driveway. So they have tons of room to ride bikes. They don't need to be around the cars regardless. So just making him think, like, where he went wrong, helping him understand. I mean, he already had a big understanding. Like, these kids they already have an idea that they did wrong and what they did wrong. But just making them go back through that and think about that, and pushing them towards, okay, how do I avoid this in the future? And there was some consequences he had to pay. I forget what I made him do for me. It wasn't anything. The punishment fit the crime.
You didn't make him buff out all the scratches in your car. You scratch one, you get rid of them all.
But there was that, and it was, but then also positively reinforcing forcing that. I told him, I said, you will never get in trouble for telling me the truth and owning up to what you did. In fact, you gain more respect from me for doing that.
Yeah.
But there's still a wrong that needs to be righted, and you owned up to it, so that tells me you're going to own up to this deficiency is a poor choice of words. Sorry, this negative consequence, and serve your punishment. You kind of think of him like, dang, can be more of a man than some men.
Yeah. That's a really great example, Andrew. Thanks for sharing that. I love how you went through that process of asking him those questions and having him answer them, because that in itself is an invaluable skill for anybody to have. Basically, you are helping him reflect on something that happened. And then you talked about the owning up to it, which is key to improving on anything.
Right.
And then you talked about, okay, like, what can you do differently next time? And you're preparing him mentally. Okay, you're in that state. You're having fun. You're good at having a good time. You're like, oh yeah, like we're all going over here. You're helping him prepare. But okay, if I'm in that situation again, I know what is my alternative. So you're helping teach the habit of reflection. And you're helping him learn to ask the right questions. One thing, just for me, I'm like thinking about, okay, like how do I apply this to Evie? And she surprises me every day by like how much she digests and understands, and I don't know whatever. So there are elements of like reason and rational conversations that I'll have with her. But another great tool for teaching responsibility to children, especially those younger, but these tools can be applied for those older as well, is there's a few that comes to mind. One is Dr. Becky from Good Inside calls it emotional vaccination. And basically it's what you did with your nephew, and it's helping them anticipate the situation happening again, and then helping them prepare their defenses, come up with an alternative. And the way you can do that with children is one example is through role play.
Yeah.
So you can be like, let's say that Abby was at the park and somebody was on the swing. She wanted to get on the swing, so she went and shoved the kid off.
Yeah.
This didn't happen, but let's just say it did. And then I could talk to her and be like, okay, talk to her about, okay, that's not wrong. Why is that wrong? What can we do differently next time? In that situation, it's like you felt anger.
Yeah.
And it's okay to feel anger. We all have that. So it's about acknowledging those emotions as normal. And like in your nephew's case, so you're having fun, and that's great. You should be having fun. Yeah. You're a kid. And there's nothing wrong with that element of things. How you process it, how you deal with it, that's where you have a choice and you have a responsibility. So then, like in this swing example, we could take turns. Okay, let's pretend that I'm on the last swing, or I'm going to pretend that you're on the last swing, and I really want to play on it. And I'm going to get so mad, and I play through getting really mad, and then I pretend like I've taken a moment. I was like, oh, I'm so mad, and I'm talking through this, and I want to push her off the swing because I want to swing. But wait, then she may fall, she may hurt herself, she'll be sad, plus she was on the swing first. Well, maybe I can go up. Or first I need to take care of my emotions. So I'm going to fold my arms and go, rah! Or I'm going to go run around the park, or whatever it is. And Dr. Becky would recommend having the kid come up with ideas, right? And then you can also, then hopefully they'll come up with other solutions like, oh, maybe maybe I'll go up and ask for a turn. It's like, when you're done, can I swing? So that role play is an effective tool.
Yes.
Either in person, or you can also use like dolls, toys, and have them play with each other and go through whatever the scenario is. I have found that to be an effective tool with Evie.
Yeah.
So
no, with one of the other nephews, he's on the spectrum, but I found that to be very effective with him too. You know, he's full of emotion, and kids on the spectrum see things in a different light, and it's hard for them to control their emotions.
Yeah.
But he's also a very rational kid too, when he finally was able to come back down. So when I'm dealing with him, one of the younger kids might be pushing his buttons and he lashes out, and so I'll calm him down. It's okay. What you did was wrong. You hurt your brother. Is that okay to do? No. It's like, why did you do that? Because I was angry at him. I'm like, and that's fine. I would have been angry with your brother too. Yeah, like you said, showing that again, we talked about this. Emotions are children really know emotions more than rationality, because it's so integral of our humanity, and it's the first things that they really experience. And so it's just, yes, acknowledging those emotions, but helping them find the alternative to work through it. So it's okay. So, well, what instead of hitting your brother, what would have been a better solution? First, I go through, okay, why is it wrong to hurt people? Not getting into the whole ethical conversation of there's certain times you can hurt people. No, like kids are, just like, why is it wrong to hurt people because you're angry? And just going through that rationalization again. But exactly like what you said, then I start saying, okay, so what would have been better ideas in this scenario?
Yeah.
And just making them could have said, hey, can you please not doing that? I'm getting angry. And I told him, I was like, if someone's making you angry, you say, hey, I'm starting to get mad. Can you please not do this?
Yeah.
Instead of lashing out. Acknowledge your own emotions, and vocalizing that can even explain this to him in a way he understood, and let them know it's bugging you, and it doesn't make you feel good. And you want to feel good, you want to be happy. And if your brother keeps doing it, then what do you do? It's like, then I just leave the room. Like, it's probably a good choice, but right there.
Yeah.
That's what I would do.
Yeah. That's a good example as well. And again, it's just like helping them think through those things and ask those questions. Like, that's going to be such a huge tool.
Oh yeah.
That is more important, I would say, than like immediate results. Like, having them give you the right answer is inconsequential.
Right.
Like, you could ask him, like, what could you have done differently? And he could say, kick him instead of hit him. It's like, okay. Like, the important thing is he's thinking through what he could do differently.
And he does, without understanding the concept of owning my actions, he's understanding, like, he has different paths he could have chosen and taken and had a different result.
Yeah, absolutely. Another tip I've heard regarding having these conversations, because regardless of like the age of your child, if they can understand something, or maybe like we took the approach that even when Evie didn't understand, or we thought Evie didn't understand, we would still try to explain things to her and reason things to her. One, because we're building the habit, and two, they understand way more than we believe, is what I now believe. And you never really know when they start registering, right? And it could be before they start talking. But anyway, the tip is to have those conversations in a moment where they are occupied in some way. So you could be playing with them, like You could be playing a board game. You could be playing dolls. You could be playing whatever, or you could be in the car. Especially as kids get older, like they're not going to want to stop what they're doing and sit down and have a conversation. But if you're both in the car already, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So it's a great time to have a conversation. Just, hey, how's you going? Just get them talking. Hey, I noticed that you were feeling like you had some pretty big emotions there. What was going on?
Yeah.
So just another couple of practical applications for how we can have these conversations or how we can get those gears turning in these children of ours.
Yeah. If we have time, Paul, if we have to stop pretty soon, let me know. But like fostering it out through as they grow up. And earlier today you were talking to me about getting buy-in from the kids. Because to me, and you brought this up, like responsibilities and chores, like giving them the responsibility of these chores kind of like sets them up. Like work is going to be the same thing day in and day out. Work is a big chore that we've bought into. So how do you, once kids progress through adolescence and then getting in older and taking on larger things, like how would you address that in fostering responsibility in those areas?
Yeah, that's a great question, and my answer is purely hypothetical at this point because we haven't really gotten to that stage as far as where Evie has a recurrent chore or something like that. The closest we've gotten is brushing teeth, and there are times where like we're cajoling her, or there are times where it's like, okay, we have to get this done, or we have to dress to get out the door. And so you have to be a little forceful at times.
Yeah.
Obviously, in our case, we're not using corporal punishment, and so we're not trying to do it. We're trying to do it in a way that is in alignment with that. But there are times where we have to use force.
Yeah.
And so anyway, when it comes to that, is a conversation Sarah and I are going to be having soon, because one is, okay, we've been focusing a lot on helping Evie process her emotions and learn how to regulate them and whatever. And now we're starting to see more impact of, okay, like she's doing pretty well at that, but there are definitely instances where she won't listen. And part of that is just being a kid, right? Yeah. But there is still a need.
Human.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. But there's still a need for discipline.
Yeah.
And so we're going to have that conversation. It's like, how can we apply more discipline in a way that she'll learn that having discipline as an individual is a responsibility you have for yourself.
Right.
But also to your family. And I think that kind of plays into like, how do you pass on foster responsibility in your kids as they grow older through chores and whatnot. And I think an element, so one thing I've heard is having your family sit down as a whole, and obviously this kind of depends on the ages of your kids, and talking about, like, what do we want for us as a family?
Right.
And what are some of those rules like that how do we want to treat each other? How do we want to keep the house? And having that conversation. And that is one way to get everybody's buy-in.
Right.
You know, there are also just going to be things that you have to establish as a rule as a parent. Because why? Because you are responsible for them. So you have to talk to them about, and that's another method of modeling, is my responsibility to you, Evie, is to keep you safe, to take care of you, to help you live your best life, to keep a roof over your head and food on the table. I have to take care of you, and I want to take care of you. And so I'm not going to let you jump on the couch, because one, it could ruin our furniture, and two, like, you could fall off and bonk your head on the corner of the table. So if you want to jump, go jump on the trampoline, or where else can you jump? You know. So there are going to be rules that you have to set and establish. And they are going to have to learn that, okay, because I'm the kid, you're the parents, like, I have to follow your rules. But I think a lot of it is just like having those conversations and helping them recognize the consequences. Stephen Covey has a good example that maybe speaks to your question. His kid, like I think they had kind of a similar discussion as a family, and they doled out responsibilities. And he talked about, okay, like mom and dad are working to get money, so that we can pay for the house, pay for the food. We're making the meals. We're doing a lot for the family. And the kids are like, oh yeah, you guys are doing a lot. And then so they recognize that we're not doing a lot, especially in comparison to what you're doing for the family. So then they were able to tie that into, oh, okay, so our chores around the house are our part in keeping this family running.
Yeah.
And so he followed like the specific examples. Okay, so my kid, his responsibility, his chore was taking care of the lawn. And he took him out to the lawn. And he set expectations. He said, see that lawn over there? Their neighbor's lawn? It's nice, green, lush. Looks great, right? See ours, brown, dead, clutter all over the yard. I want our yard to look like that.
Yeah.
You're the boss. You're in charge. You get to come up with how you're going to do this. And I'll try not to get too much in the nitty gritty of it, but basically over a couple of weeks, his son fails, but he repeatedly, without micromanaging, has a weekly touch point, which is something they agreed to. And at one point he's okay, let's clean up together. And you're the boss, so you tell me what to do. And so his son is like, okay, why don't you go pick up the plastic that's stuck in the trees over there? And then he goes and does that. So his son is, oh wow, I am the boss, I am in control. And that's empowering in itself. And then he's, okay, we're halfway done with the yard. Let's look at this half of the yard versus the other half of the yard. Notice the difference? How do you feel when you look at the bad side? How do you feel when you look at the good side? Again, getting those gears turning and helping him recognize, oh, it feels good when you accomplish something good. And when you, the product, the positive consequence is good.
Yes.
So again, hypothetical from my point of view, because we haven't gotten to that point with Evie, but those are some of the things I've heard that I think I would like to apply.
Yeah, I think you and I think along the same lines there, because there was a little bit of that before we left for the seminary high school in my family. And then there was like some other oddball chores that I hated, but the ones where like my parents said, you're in charge of the yard, make sure it gets mowed every week. And then even laid out, if you don't, we get fines from the city, and we don't have the money to pay for the fines. So it's your job to make sure. You have to also highlight them highlighting some of the bad, but again, it was just like they're trying to instill what this guy was like, that sense of pride in owning that part of the house and getting it that fulfillment and that success of reaching that point and finally having the nicest lawn on the block. And then, like you said to the boss, my dad would come and say, like, where are the sprinklers set up? How do you want them set up? Because I've been doing it all week. I know how to get maximum coverage. For water. It's just like, oh, you need to put one over here, Dad, one over here, one over here, and it'll be fine. And I'll move them to the next spot. Come on.
Yeah. As you were talking, that made me think of a point we brought up last episode where there's the pride of being, and the fulfillment and the massness that you get from being part of something larger than yourself, which in this case is your family.
Exactly.
And so you can have that family pride too. We're a family who takes care of each other, who all pulls our weight to have a streamlined as streamlined as we can get in the family. But where the house is clean, where we communicate with each other, we support each other, we love each other. And that's also an element. Okay, there's pride and there's love and there's fulfillment you get up out of that.
Right. And there's, to the other part of that little story you told too, is I've used this with my nieces and nephews. My mom will assign them all different areas of the house. Then they have a chore chart. But when we're all doing chore time together, I'm supervisor, you know. I'll let them do a job how they think is good, and it's a lot of times it falls short of what Mama Jean's standards are, because a clean house is a good house, and I agree. But like when they fail at completing a task completely, it's or before they start it, I should say, they'll come and ask like, "How should I do this? How should I do that?" I'm like, "That's your area. You just got to get it clean according to how we've taught you."
Mm-hmm.
And so if I did this or that, if it's a good idea and I know it's going to fall short, I still let them run with it because one, they're putting in the effort to try
Mm-hmm.
to make it accomplish their responsibilities to the best that they see fit. And I'm personally I in my work spot, like I hate when I ask someone a question. Yes, I'm looking for a quick answer, but when someone says, "Oh, if you were to refer to this section of the guideline, it's in there."
Mm-hmm.
It's, oh, and then I become better at my job because I had to read the whole section of policy, and it opens up the broader picture. So I kind of apply that. You can ask me, but I'm going to give you a general answer, kid. You have to do your job how you think you have to do your job.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, when it falls short and then I come around for inspection time, you missed this didn't happen. So, what do you think? Like, how are you going to be able to do your chores better to what in your plan fell short? Where do you think your plan fell short? How did it fall short, I should
Mm-hmm.
say? Like, why didn't it include this area to begin with? Like, you knew this was your area, so how I'm not
Yeah.
looking for like the immediate. I'll do it right now, but it's just like, yeah, what I was thinking of how to do this didn't work.
Yeah.
So you're making them. It's you gotta let kids make mistakes. They learn from it. We learn from it as grown adults too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think mistakes are great.
Yeah,
You know,
you're a
that's
great responsibility teacher.
was that.
You're a great
Oh,
responsibility teacher.
absolutely. But yeah, that's a phrase I want to be familiar with.
Mhm.
Is that mistakes are great because they help you learn
Yeah.
if you reflect on them,
Mhm.
right?
Path to success is paved with failure.
It absolutely is. Fail fast is another one. You know,
Mhm.
fail fast because the faster you fail, the more you'll learn, and the better you'll do next time.
Exactly.
All yeah, this is so great. I love how talking about responsibility, like
We're going all over, but we're bringing it back, and it's
yeah,
good.
but it's all stuff that we need to consider for ourselves and
Mhm.
for our children. But I love how reflection and just like learning the right questions to think about
Yeah.
and the right way to think through things just came up again a couple times.
Yeah.
As we're talking about responsibility.
Exactly. And I think this is like a good spot to kind of end it. I know we've been stressing like the point of getting to know yourself, and so something I just kind of I don't know, maybe we do this for all our future episodes or not, but we have been doing like the resolution part. But like changing that to like getting to know yourself. Like we've talked about setting time asides for ourselves. So maybe just after you shut this podcast off, you got some minute to reflect, do some self-reflection. How am I going to walk away from this conversation we've had today, Paul? Like how am I going to change?
Mm-hmm.
How am I going to be a more responsible person? How am I going to take greater ownership of all the actions in my life? Are there certain habits or goals I need to be more accountable for? Are there areas in my relationship with my spouse, in my case with my family members, my nieces and nephews, that fall in my lap and I really gotta bear down?
Now bears.
But bear down on. Again, in your case, towards Evie, and your future, your soon to be here son. And then am I being that positive example in owning all of my own actions and consequences towards others, towards myself, towards my work. Where am I falling short? How can I use those mind games that we're talking about on kids right now?
Yeah.
And just ask yourself those same mind games, but rational conversation.
Yeah. Oh man, how much of parenting is our main game? So my goodness, either applied by the child or the parent. Ugh, so true.
So really, to everyone out there that, as we tune out here, just take 5 minutes after you shut this off and just ask or go back the last 2 minutes and listen to those questions I just asked.
Yeah.
Add more questions if you need to.
Yeah. Yeah, and Andrew, you don't have to share yours, but I'll share mine because I was thinking about this as you were asking those questions, and I think one of my responsibilities as a husband and father is to Sarah and to have good and open communication, and part of that is communicating the schedule of things. Like, for example, today's podcast episode, what we ended up having a calendar conflict because I forgot to put it on the calendar.
Yeah.
And then when we talked about when we were planning things, I totally spaced on it. And so the consequence was us having to divide and conquer on an appointment for Evie, that we would have either A, preferred that we both go to, or B, that I had owned.
Right.
And it wasn't one we could easily reschedule. So that ended up putting extra onus on Sarah on a busy work day at the end of a busy week. And that is on me.
Yeah.
So something we didn't really get into is extreme ownership, but like that's on me. And I'm going to take ownership of that. But what can I do better? Right? We're talking about asking those questions. What can I do better? And it's simply putting these darn tootin' episodes and meetings that we have on the calendar and letting her know ahead of time. And so I'm going to resolve to do that.
No, for me, and you know me with this point, it's a bad habit I have of assuming a lot of things but like when we have conversations about this podcast, it even affects my work at bank I work at. But it's very easy, especially when you're dealing with people that know you so well, to assume certain things. So in my scenario, I assumed that I was going to get an answer from upper management, and I didn't. And the month ended, and so my direct supervisor was like, "Yeah, you should have, like, I know she just responded to your other email about the exact same scenario for a different client, but you should have just said, hey, what about this one?" Yeah, that was me assuming. I'm terrible at that.
Yeah.
Even in our communications as friends and as stuff for this podcast, like, it's easy to just assume that the understanding is there when it's not. So along with you, just like clear communication, intentional communication, in that regard of, okay, I'm assuming too much, not making my intentions as clear, and not trying to figure out what the other person's really meaning by that. Like, what they say one thing, oh, they mean this. I should just ask, just to make sure, because this is falling on me, and I can assume what they want. And if I do it that way, that's not. You and I have run in this hundreds of times through the course of our friendship.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh my goodness. To varying degrees of
it's ended up well, but yeah, it's not pleasant when that happens. So I owe it to myself, I owe it to you, I owe it to my work and my family to know, understand, and make clear my own understanding of it. So that way there's no realm of possibility of miscommunication or misunderstanding, and that I am like, I can truly achieve the good by doing the good.
Yeah. No, I love it. Thanks for posing those questions, Andrew, and that sounds like a really good reflection on your end. But yeah, we encourage all of you to do something similar. Hopefully leading by example kind of sets the stage. And let us know what you think.
Yeah, thank you all for joining us today.
Yeah, subscribe, share this with somebody else.
Absolutely. And if there's anything you want us to talk about, hit us up on our website, contact us, socials, and we look forward to hearing from all of you and your experiences. So,
Heck yeah.
all right, Paul.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you all, and thank you, Paul.
All right. Until next time.